let's say you're lying in bed and you're dead exhausted and you just don't have the energy to get up. It's as if there's a feedback loop. Your brain is assessing the level of oxygen that you have at your disposal.
Yes, yes,
And the diaphragm is somehow involved in that.
yes, yes.
And it
Yes.
says, you know what, you don't have enough oxygen to get up and pick up across the room. Why don't you just keep lying there for a while? And conversely, if you have the energy, you know you've got it.
Well, it is, and your diaphragm switches you from the when you are sleeping, from the sympathetic nervous system, which deals with the skeletal muscles, except for itself, of course, to the parasympathetic nervous system, which deals with the deep internal organs. So gradually, as you tire, and it becomes obvious that sleep is going to be required to restore the body, then the diaphragm expects the brain to recognize this and to organize the body so that it will lie down and not involve a lot of sensory motor activity. At the end of the day, doesn't really want you to be reading or thinking. It just wants you to just put that together so we can wind down together, and then the night shift can get on with it. But waking up, the diaphragm has not yet got its the necessary requirement of blood supply immediately organized back from the deep internal organs. It might still happen to be working on something, and if you suddenly jump out of bed, then you're going to be shortchanging definitely your liver, which takes an awful lot of oxygen, and the deep metabolic processes of the night suddenly jolted out of that, because your eyes and the skeletal muscles of your limbs are now suddenly pulling the blood supply to them, and so it has to do something about that quickly, but it's shortchanging everything else. So this constant shortchanging can produce can affect the health of whatever is the most vulnerable organ in terms of capillary blood service, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's much better to wake up and before you've opened your eyes, do a little work onto your diaphragm, or if you didn't know anything about that, just gradually feel your way back through the parasympathetic back into the dominance of the sympathetic nervous system, and get up gently. Mm-hmm. So to bound out of bed and go for a run the first thing in the morning is not in the long term necessarily a very good idea. So maybe why the man who invented jogging died of a heart attack.
So in a proper sleep, the blood kind of drains out of the large muscles.
Yes, yes.
And it drains out of the brain too. And it goes to the organs.
Yes.
And for the organs to rejuvenate and restore themselves, repair themselves, they need the oxygen, which is delivered by the blood. Okay, so the body's making, in a true parasympathetic, full parasympathetic
Yes.
sleep state, your body's saying, okay, less blood for the brain, because we're not thinking, we're not doing, we don't need the eyes, we don't need the trapezius, we don't need the thigh muscles.
No.
So it's all going to the liver and the kidney. Now, I'm sure you've had clients, and many, who've had sleep disturbances. And how does the diaphragm fit into sleep disturbance? People that don't sleep.
Well,
there's
it's
always,
wonderful. Once your diaphragm is working properly, you sleep well.
well, so you know all there's these sleep clinics, and they're quite involved,
I
and
know.
not sure what they're doing.
I'm not
They're
sure
very
what they're doing.
expensive, and you go and they plug you into 10,000 machines, and
No, we put people to sleep very quickly.
yeah.
You could have the whole clinic fast asleep.
So once the diaphragm is on the path to being restored,
As soon as you begin to work on the diaphragm, everyone I work with, they go to sleep. But the diaphragm also, the brain needs blood supply during sleep, during rapid eye movement sleep, during dream sleep. And that's an exclusively diaphragm activity when, again, some more limited blood supply is allowed back to the skeletal muscles, but only so they twitch. So, which is why you see cats.
So
twitching.
this is an interesting question. You know, in Tai Chi, and they often talk about directing the Chi and all this kind of stuff. But when you're dead asleep, who's directing it? Who's moving a little bit of extra blood to the brain and enough blood to the muscles so that they only twitch?
So the obviously the nervous system is, but who is conducting the information to the nervous system? Well, one can only conclude that the electromagnetic fields of the body are communicating with one another. They know this state. They know what needs to be done. And depending on its the levels of carbon dioxide in the arterial blood, because the carbon dioxide is the informative metabolite, meaning there's less oxygen, so there's more carbon dioxide. So that would be an indicator. There are what's called chemoreceptors, which will direct more oxygenated blood into vulnerable areas that now need that increase for whatever metabolic reason happens to be paramount at the time. And it's very clear that the body is a hugely sophisticated communication system, and that the organs really have personality and intelligence to communicate to one. It couldn't function without that. And this, the beauty of it all, I just was describing how we hear to someone else the other day, and it almost in tears. They could think, oh my God. So this is really what's going on, and I never thought about it. We just are trained to think of our bodies as being sponge rubber, and which somehow or another responds to a pill, and amazingly, we have these contraptions, these little computers called our mobile phones, and we don't really ask how they work either. So we ask very little about the reality of the properties of the physical world in which we live and in which we are an intrinsic part. Everything is interconnected. Everything, you can't take away one element from this planet without destabilizing the whole. It interconnects very beautifully. This was the concept of Gaia, which people seem to have forgotten as well, or forgotten the importance of the contribution of humanity to Gaia, or the positive contribution of humanity to Gaia.